Hi, everybody. This is a special collaborative stream between the Columbus Cartoon Coalition and CanonWrite Productions. And we're here to talk all about crowdfunding. The what, the how, the where, the why, and the who. So let's introduce ourselves really quick. I am Kelci D Crawford. I am one of the executive members of the Columbus Cartoon Coalition, and I am also the crowdfunding manager for CanonWrite Productions, especially their latest project, The Universal Flaws of Robotics. And I am joined by...
Hi, everyone. My name is Ben Wright Heuman, he, him. I am also on the executive board of C3, and I am one of the co-founders of CanonWrite Productions, which is making that anthology that Kelci just so wonderfully called out. And I am the project manager on that specific project.
Cool. We are also joined by...
Hello, my name is Rainer Kannenstine. I am the other co-founder of CanonWrite Productions.
Terrific. And last but not least, we are joined by...
Angela Boyle, and I'm here. I'm just a helper of CanonWrite Productions.
Yes. One of the brain trust, as it were.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's also worth calling out that Angela has done anthologies of her own with the Awesome Possum anthology. So has a lot of experience with organizing this kind of stuff and running Kickstarters for it.
Yes. Also, before I forget, because I shouted out Universal Flaws of Robotics, I'm also going to shout out that the Columbus Cartoon Coalition has their own crowdfunding campaign going called C Stands For. It is our own anthology collection, and you can check that out at crowdfunder.com/C Stands For. Links to both campaigns are going to be in the description, and on the tickers, I'm going to be switching back and forth between the two campaigns. So, real fast, just to get us started, before we get into any particulars about platforms or what platforms to use, why would you want to crowdfund in the first place? Open discussion.
Because you need money.
I was going to say starter money.
But especially for like the bigger projects.
Yeah, it's a little different for an anthology versus I'm funding my graphic novel. It's not just paying for the books. It's also paying for contributors.
Mm-hmm.
That's right.
Yes.
And one of the... Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rainer.
No, you go.
I was going to say that one of the big things is crowdfunding is actually a really cool development of the internet. It's one of those things that, in my opinion, is like one of the better things that comes out of the internet is all of a sudden you're not like the old system would have been, you have to find a publisher. If you really wanted to go underground and you didn't have money, you'd have to find like a venture capitalist or something crazy like that. Or, you could apply for a grant, which is still a good process if you're able to do it. But grants are limited and often you're doing other stuff. Or you could reach out directly to the audience that you want to make the product for anyway, and you can have them help you fund it. Yep. And you can often do it for less money than you might need to from any of these other groups. And you can often do it more efficiently and more directly.
One of the things that I think a lot about is in tabletop RPGs, there's the concept of a fantasy heartbreaker, which the idea is in that modern sense, it's just someone who thinks that they're going to make a game that changes the world. But they're missing the context of back in the day, before things like crowdfunding, people would have to take a loan on their house and make a huge print run. Like, you don't know how much to print. So you're like, I'm going to print 20,000 copies. And then you find you just aren't selling 20,000 copies.
Yep.
And Kickstarter is a fantastic way to be like, we know how much we're printing because this is how many people have bought. And it gets that entire guesstimate step of, well, I ordered 20 copies and people want 10 million. Or I ordered 10 million and people want 20.
Yeah, right. You get to avoid either scenario.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's not like the scene in Ghostbusters. It's not like the scene in Ghostbusters where the main trio are walking down the street and it's like, oh, everybody has a third mortgage on their house to start a business. It's fine. At least with crowdfunding, you can avoid that kind of stuff.
especially in this day and age.
Yes. Ugh, who can afford a
One
third
mortgage is enough.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So crowdfunding does make it a whole lot easier to reach out to your audience, say, I have this really cool thing and I need your help to make it happen. And then if the audience is enticed enough, they will help pledge a certain amount that they can pledge, share it with others. And as a group, as a collective, we can make that project happen. So with that, let's talk a little bit about, right now there are 2 crowdfunding platforms that are, let's be honest, these are the platforms that we are currently running campaigns on. Kickstarter and Crowdfunder. Let's talk about the big elephant in the room. We'll talk about Kickstarter first because that's the one that people may know about, but there may be some like finer details that folks don't know about. So for Kickstarter, what's y'all's experience and how many campaigns have you run on Kickstarter?
I can't remember. I'm looking real quick.
This is my 5th campaign on Kickstarter.
Okay.
This is my 3rd.
Okay.
Somewhere around 10.
Yeah.
My third number.
I lost track after 14, but I want to say 15 going on 16 now. Just for Kickstarter. We're not even talking about Crowdfunder yet. For crowdfunders, I think Ben and I, you and I are the only ones who have had experience with Crowdfunder. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
As someone running a project, I have backed crowdfunder campaigns before.
Ooh.
I'm sure I've backed on Crowdfunder.
Okay. So yeah, I would love to hear from your perspectives as backers of a crowdfunder. I could talk a little bit about being a backer of a Kickstarter, but not of a crowdfunder yet. So I would love to ask you questions about that from the backer end of things. So yeah, I think Ben, you've done how many crowdfunder campaigns? How many?
I've only done 1 crowdfunder campaign. I've helped a little bit with the C3 campaigns in the past, but for the most part, I've only done 1 fully on the back end with crowdfunder.
Okay. And I thought I had done 5. I think I've done 7. So got some background there.
Yeah. One thing to definitely call out, because it is one of the things that makes a lot of sense for you to be doing Crowdfunder a lot, because Crowdfunder works really well with slightly smaller campaigns.
It does. Yeah.
And that tends to be what you do. You like to do more small campaigns, whereas we tend to do bigger ones for big projects and less off.
Well, anthology projects are also, you're seeking to pay the contributors who contributed to the anthology, and you're doing usually larger print runs of those. So that does make more sense. And like Kickstarter, you can use Kickstarter for smaller projects, and we'll get into that. But Crowdfunder is really nice for the smaller project side of things to an extent. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. So, all right, let's get into it. So if somebody wanted to start a Kickstarter, we'll talk about Crowdfunder later, but if somebody wanted to start a Kickstarter, what does that process look like? Remember, this is a resource for folks. So for people who have never done Kickstarter before, who've never started a Kickstarter before, what would they need to know, and what does it look like to set one up?
We need to know math.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what I was going to say.
Yes.
There's lots of, I think, spreadsheets out there and stuff of people kind of showing you the math, but it's, a lot of prep work before you hit create. not even launch, before you hit create, because you got to know how many books you think you're going to need, how many you want, how much those will cost, which means you have to price those out, which means you got to, look at a bunch of different vendors. And if you're doing an anthology, you'll have to know how many people, how many people you're paying
Yep.
Yeah. And go ahead and jump in, Rainer.
Absolutely. I mean, I wasn't thinking, but absolutely. I'd say you figure out exactly the minimum you can do this for.
Bare
then
minimum.
Figure out all expenses.
Mm-hmm.
Kickstarter in particular rewards you the lower your goal is, because the more your goal is fulfilled faster, the more your campaign is promoted. So with Kickstarter, the way I like to think about it is the pledge goal is how much can you do this for with every single expense accounted for. And then hopefully you'll go overboard on that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the thing that's important to note about that also is it's funny how the expenses can pile up and how they'll increase also because of Kickstarter. Because one of the things Kickstarter warns you is when you factor in their fees and credit card fees and the taxes you're going to have to pay, you need to basically increase whatever you put in as your minimum by about 15%. In order to account for it. So that's honestly like the Kickstarter we're running right now. We're asking for $9,000, which is a lot for a comic Kickstarter. But we were doing all the math and it's like, okay, in order to cover that amount, this is how much we're going to have to sell. This is how much we're going to have to collect for shipping, because you have to factor in paying for shipping as well. You have to, this is how much we're going to, and then we have to multiply it because we're going to be paying the platform. And then you still want to leave a buffer in there because you're probably going to screw up your math. Like, let's be real.
Yeah. And then
Always, like, whenever you can, have a buffer.
Then there's shipping. Are you including shipping or are you charging later?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
There's lots of
I will say
weird math to consider.
Mm-hmm.
both of those are things that I actually really like about Crowdfunder. Crowdfunder asks, their total goal is based on raw sales. They collect shipping, but it's separate. So when you give them your goal, you actually don't need to include shipping on that. In addition, they have options where you can give backers the chance to basically cover the platform fees for you. So,
That's cool.
and the thing is, most will do it. It's not very much to each individual person, but if they're willing to do that, like that would, like those two together can save a campaign thousands of dollars.
Yeah, it really offsets the fees. And it really offsets the whole like, oh man, I have to budget like 15% to make this happen. Or like an extra 15%. Like with Crowdfunder, way easier to handle that math.
Yeah, it's like algebra to do that Kickstarter math.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. One thing to throw out there, just because it's almost the elephant in the room when you're talking about Crowdfunder versus Kickstarter. We're going to be saying a lot of nice things about Crowdfunder. Crowdfunder has a huge number of things going for it and is actually really well set up for creators. Kickstarter has one thing over it that makes it so that we very often end up going with Kickstarter on specific types of projects. And that is discovery. Kickstarter is arguably better about discovery than any social media platform right now when it comes to getting projects shown to people. To
an extent.
Just going over.
I mean, previously, yes, but we'll get to that. Go ahead.
That was going to be one of my questions.
The numbers are down right now for us with Kickstarter. Like they're lower than they have been in the past percentage-wise. They've still brought in almost $1,242 as of right now to our Kickstarter. That's not nothing. That's 25% of what we've made so far.
Our highest, for the record, was 57%. So that is quite a significant downturn. But on our first campaign, most backers found us from Kickstarter rather than our own audience.
Yeah. And our average has generally been around 30 to 40%. So it is lower. It's still really high. And unfortunately, because Crowdfunder is a newer platform, you don't see those same discovery numbers. So that does definitely make it a little bit tricky. Now, if you're really good at marketing your campaign, which like something like what C3 is doing right now is perfect for that, because they have a built-in community that can help support it. And they have a good way of getting the words out. They're doing live streams like this. Crowdfunder still works out really, really well. But that is one of the things that Kickstarter has going for it. That is why, well, for example, we did Kickstarter with ours because we needed $9,000. It's a little scary if you can't get discovered.
Right. A little harder when you're basically in charge of an additional 25% of the marketing. Because like a full 25% of our current pledges with the universal flaws of robotics are because Kickstarter is like, all right, we got our algorithm going in the background to help promote you.
Right.
And basically signal to backers, oh, you liked this campaign? You might like universal flaws of robotics. Yeah.
Man, they sucker me in with that.
Yeah. Kickstarter is a bit like a shopping platform in that way.
Yeah, it's my downfall. I
Yeah.
have backed so many Kickstarters.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
This is something.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say, this is something I'd love Angela to talk about, because you're basically the type of person that is exactly why Kickstarter works.
Oh, yeah. Yep. Yeah. I originally got started backing all these Kickstarters because I had a really good job and spare money. And I was like, yes, I just want to support everybody. And now I'm just addicted to it.
I hear you. I mean, I've backed 68 at this point.
Wow. Yeah, so you got some feedback about like what would make a good Kickstarter just from the backer side of things.
I mean, I suppose, but it also just, it's Angela's point where it's just like, you see an email and it's like, wait, I have it pulled up. Oh, I've heard of Knock magazine. There's a new one. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sarah Cook says same.
I gotta see how many I've backed.
The other thing too that
161.
Gosh.
Yeah, wow. That's a lot.
Yeah. Addicted.
The other thing that Kickstarter does, that we'll talk about Crowdfunder and how it does this in a minute, but Kickstarter also does this thing where if you go to the Kickstarter page for the campaign, there's a little button that's like, remind me when this is about to close.
Yes.
Which is a very handy button to have.
Yes.
Yeah. Like, one of the things that we're probably going to get into in more detail in a bit, but there is definitely an arc in when you get your pledges during a campaign. Most typical arc you see is big boost of pledge. Hold on, I'll do it in the right direction for the camera. Big boost of pledges at the beginning, then it kind of peters out, and then towards the end you get a huge boost. And that huge boost mainly happens because in that 48-hour period, right before it ends, everyone who was just following the campaign gets notified that it's going to end soon. A lot of people will check the campaign, and especially if it either has already made it or it's getting close to making it, a lot more backers come in. Yeah, just as a side note, I'm not going to call out which one it was. I actually backed a project during in like the last week because I got their notification and I checked, and it looked like a cool project, and it wasn't doing, and it was, I think they just passed the halfway point when I backed it. They've got about an hour left. I just checked it. They funded. Like,
nice.
They got a huge boost right at the end.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. So, like,
fingers
it's
crossed
really cool to see that kind of thing.
Fingers crossed it happens for the robot anthology.
100%. No, like, I mean, this is an awkward thing to bring up, but the robot anthology has currently, unless anything changes, has about a week left in it, and we're a little past halfway, which a lot of people seem scared about. I'm not going to say I'm not sweating a little bit, but I also know we've been doing a good job of steadily bringing people in. We can see the numbers. We know a lot of people are following the project, so we're still hopeful that we'll get a big enough boost in there that we'll actually make it to the end.
Yeah, and we'll talk about how to promote a campaign later, because we've also been doing a lot of outreach to help promote this particular campaign.
Yes.
And I'm setting up a separate outreach campaign for C stands for the comics anthology that Columbus Cartoon Coalition is putting together. Speaking of which, I'm going to switch out the banners really fast.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah.
One of the other things I'll throw out there while you're doing that swap is one of the most important things that you see in every guide for doing this kind of thing, and all these, and just everywhere, and as a universal truth in running these things: don't panic. Running these things is scary. It's fine. It's nerve-wracking that all of a sudden you have a time limit to raise money. And it's very easy to be reactionary about it, and you don't need to be.
Yes. Part of that also can deal with timelines.
Mhm.
which that is an interesting segue for how long should you run a campaign for, whether you're doing it on crowdfunder or Kickstarter. And if you're doing it on Kickstarter, they actually have a little, they have the block where you pick the date that you want it to run till, or you choose how many days you want to run it for. And there's a little dialogue option on the bottom that says, we recommend 30 days or less.
Mm-hmm.
I usually trend towards less personally, but the average is generally 30 days from what I have seen. Very rarely do I see a campaign go for longer than that.
I will say one of the things that I've been thinking about going over the numbers on our campaign, not to say, like, I'm not saying we're doing anything wrong or anything like that, but I did look at it and realize because we're raising more money than we normally do, we actually might have benefited from a 45-day campaign. Like that would be the situation where that actually would be perfect. Because we've actually been, because of the outreach that we'll be talking about in a bit, we've actually been pretty steadily, like, I think we've been pulling in an average of $200 in pledges a day.
Nice.
And so if we had 2 extra weeks to be pulling in that money, we could actually, that would have make this process a little bit easier.
Before the stream ends, hopefully somebody, one of you, remind me to talk about campaign relaunches.
Yeah.
Because that is a thing. I've only had to do it once before. And I could talk a little bit about that, but
cool.
We could talk about that later. Yeah. Yeah, because believe it or not, with all of the campaigns that I've run, I've had one failure.
Ooh.
I know. Wild. But you know, the draw, you do so many and you will bump up against failure at some point.
Yeah.
Actually, I'll go ahead and just talk about it now, since we're talking about it. So the campaign for me that failed and why it failed, it was a art book. It was a collection of sketches from Inktober 2018. It was the Gods and Spirits sketchbook. I was asking at the time for a really high amount, and this was part of the failure. I had put the high amount there because I had factored in what should have been stretch goals as part of the base goal. Yeah. I crunched my numbers and I was feeling very, very confident. I was like, oh, I think I can hit this really high number pretty easily. No, it did not happen. So when I saw that, I did the numbers again and I was like, okay, what's the bare minimum that I need to make this project happen? And then within about a week, I was able to make a new version of the campaign, relaunch it, and then I got funded pretty shortly after. It did help to have that failed campaign to post an update and be like, hey, I've relaunched. If you're still interested in this, head over to the new page and back it there. So that does help. To if you failed the first time, you can look at, well, what did I do wrong? And it's usually a budget error in my experience. I mean, it was for me. And from some of the campaigns that have failed previously that I've seen, it's usually a budget error, or they were asking for a really big goal to try to cover a bunch of stuff that should have been stretch goals. Or they just didn't do a whole ton of outreach.
I was going to say, when I've come close to a failure is because I have not been very good at outreach. I've been working really, really hard at getting better at that specifically.
Yeah. You know, it is interesting. Several times I've backed projects that have failed, and then they've launched almost entirely the same project for the same budget. And I was just like, what are you doing? And they often succeed the second time. And I wonder whether it was that outreach step.
Yeah,
it really is.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about that, because we touched a bit on how Kickstarter has some built-in features for discoverability. Like, oh, you backed this campaign, you might like this one. And the built-in email reminders when a campaign is like, oh, we only have like 24 hours left on this campaign. I will admit, as somebody who's done a lot of projects on Crowdfunder, from what I can tell, Crowdfunder does not have that built-in feature of we're in our final 24 hours unless you make an update on the page and publicize it so that everyone who is following the page gets that update. Yeah. Because they also have an update system. And the way that they have it set up is that you can have the email notification sent to everybody, which includes everybody who follows the project and hasn't backed it yet, people who have backed it, etc. But yeah, that is something that like Crowdfunder, you have to take a little extra step with Crowdfunder when it comes to like that final 24-hour notification. But this actually does lead me to something that Crowdfunder had done for the longest time, and I've only seen Kickstarter start to do recently. Allowing pledges past the deadline.
Yes.
Yeah. That used to not be a thing with Kickstarter. But this was a thing with Crowdfunder, and I get the hunch that Crowdfunder offering this as a feature was what made Kickstarter go, oh no, we need to update our system so that we can offer that too.
Yeah. And it is a very cool feature. I was noticing it when we were setting all this up, and it actually benefits the Universal Flaws of Robotics Kickstarter, because one of the things we were doing is we're offering sales on some of our books. Like with the paperback edition for our anthology, we're marking it down to 25. The retail looks like it's going to be 30. And part of this is if people are posting after the Kickstarter ends, well, the sale's no longer going on. So now they're buying it for 30. So we actually have that option built in.
Yeah. But the thing with Kickstarter is you have to hit your base goal first before they can offer that extended grace period for extra pledges.
There is a crowdfunding campaign. I can't remember. I think it was on Crowdfunder for a tabletop RPG called Mothership.
Ooh.
And love Mothership. One of my favorite games. I've only run a single session, but I still love it.
I've seen playthroughs of it, and it looked like a lot of fun.
And, I had the original version of Mothership, and I was like, this is fine. However, people who backed the crowdfunding campaign for it got sneak peek previews and talked about them. And that's what I personally backed, is because I heard people being like, this crowdfunding version is so good. And I personally went to that. And I think that that's the thing we're going to hear a lot more often as we go through this, is just backers sharing, yes, this was a good thing to back. We should get on this. And that's something that's hard to do while a campaign is going.
Right. Yeah. And we can talk a little bit about like keeping in touch with your audience, like during and after a campaign, because obviously you want to keep in touch with your audience during a campaign run. Easiest way to do that, write updates and post those updates. And some of my favorite updates to post are little sneak peeks at add-on rewards and little behind the scenes peeks at, since we do comics, a little behind the scenes peek at like, here's how I made this cover art, this comic page, this da-da-da. And sometimes I'll have polls going, especially since sometimes I can print stickers from home. I can have a little poll going, being like, what would you like to see for a sticker for when we hit this milestone? And have a little poll going so that backers and the curious can vote on it. Because it's a cool way to keep people engaged.
Yeah, that's the word I was trying to think of. Encouraging engagement.
Yes.
Yes.
Speaking of, Ben, maybe you could talk a little bit about something that the Universal Flaws of Robotics is doing for audience engagement. Could you talk to us a little bit about this coloring contest?
That's a good segue. So we're actually just announcing this right now. We'll have a formal announcement and a file that people can go to attached to all this afterwards, but we are doing a coloring contest. Basically, we've got one of the pages. This is my example from our story, A Clockwork Love by Kelly Ricker. And basically, we're just going to be putting this image out on the internet, and anyone who wants to color it and post it can do so. Just make sure you tag us with the hashtag UFRcomic, and we will see it. And the one we like most, oh yeah, Rainer, show yours.
Nice.
Look at that. It's so pretty.
Excellent.
I'll record mine.
But yeah, the one that we like most, or one that we randomly select, or however we figure out to do, will be called out and be like, you are awesome.
Yes.
So yeah, spread the word and have your friends all go, this looks cool.
Yeah, Sarah likes the idea.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sarah, I know, is a member of C3. We will be dropping this in the C3 Discord, definitely. So keep an eye out for that after the stream.
Marvelous, marvelous, glorious. And now I have the Universal Flaws of Robotics link going along the bottom. But links to both campaigns for the Robot Anthology and C Stands For from Columbus Cartoon Coalition. The links for both are going to be in the description. Yes. So coloring contests are a good way to keep people engaged.
And they're
Yes.
fun.
Yes.
You picked one of my favorite pages in the book.
Yeah. It's a really good page.
Oh man.
Yeah, it's also one of the only stories that's in black and white, and I just had this realization of, wait a minute, this is perfect for a coloring page. Let's do it.
There you go.
Yeah, I
Also-
was looking through and I noticed that there were a couple that had spot colors, but were mostly black and white, and I thought that was a really interesting choice.
Yes.
It's funny because one of the things that we did say people could do stuff in color, and we did get a few people sending in stories that were either spot color or single color, and that was a big part of. We were talking about this in a stream yesterday, but it's one of the things that we were thinking about when we were actually figuring out the order of the stories. We didn't want to have all the like single color and black and white stuff packed together. We wanted it to be spread out a little bit.
Mhm.
Yeah, I was just scrolling through doing a quick book proofread and noticed that visually the order was really nice. You didn't have like a soft watercolor up against a soft watercolor. It was, instantly something new. So it was a very engaging order.
Yep.
Real quick, Ben, could you shout out the artist who drew that page that is part of the coloring contest?
Oh yes, that artist is Kelly M. Ricker. Here, I actually was just, because I'm making sure the page is ready, I was actually just looking up her website, so I'll put that in the chat and we can add that as a banner in a second.
Terrific.
What's interesting is she also was in, I think, Awesome Possum 3.
Fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, one of my favorite comics. Yeah.
Yeah.
Terrific.
Yeah.
I will say, when the application came in and this is basically the story that was pitched, I was like, it's basically a clockwork robot romance story, and it was so different from what I was expecting from a robot anthology that I'm like, great, done, I love it, do it. We want this story.
Yeah. Shouting out Kelly Ricker's link on the screen. Be sure to check out her work. Heck yeah. She is one of the contributing artists for the Universal Flaws of Robotics. Link scrolling along the bottom in the QR code and in the doobly-doo. All right, my shameless plug is done.
Yay.
They do fantastic work.
Oh, yes. Kelly does do great work. I mean, everybody did great in this anthology. It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, just to balance it out, the folks who contributed to C Stands For also did great work.
Yes.
Yes. Just to balance that out. Yeah.
One thing I'd like to throw out, because it occurs to me, is a good thing to talk about with running any of these campaigns.
Yes.
We mentioned kind of before briefly, if you're doing a campaign just for your work versus doing an anthology or ensemble project. And just, it's really nice because both of these projects that we're promoting right now are community projects. They're built around having multiple people involved in them, and especially C stands for, it centers around one of the biggest comics groups in the Ohio area. Which is, and it's really nice having that weight taken off of you. Like when it's not all you doing everything.
Yeah, you're not the one doing all of the work. You're working as a team.
Exactly.
I was hoping I
And,
could double check how many members exactly were in the Columbus Cartoon Coalition, because I don't recall off the top of my head how many members we have.
It's a lot.
Yeah, I think it's like over 200.
Yeah.
Much can be said about the artistic merits of collaboration, and much should be said. I think that it's fantastic.
Yes.
I think that one of the big things to remember with crowdfunding is that it is crowd funding. And I think that there is the crowd of an individual that can bring, like, people who are interested in your work. Then there's the crowd of the people on the platform who can be fined for work. However, I think there's also a big opportunity in crowdfunding to bring all these crowds together, looking at work that they might not otherwise do in this way. Because crowdfunding is such a opportunity to excite your audience, to put it out there, an excuse to advertise.
Yeah. An excuse to like be that toddler energy of, look at this thing I made.
And with so many people, you're going to get so many people looking at work that they might not otherwise have seen. And that's such a magical part of crowdfunding collaborative efforts.
Yes. Yeah. That's why I ran my anthologies, was to share all this cool stuff. All these people.
And it also is kind of this, I mentioned it feels like the good part of the internet. And it kind of reminds me of the old school webcomic boom, where all these people were suddenly finding a platform to talk about their stuff. And a lot of them started funding through Kickstarter and through other platforms.
Yeah. There's kind of a joke in some online comic circles that's like, it's just the same dollar being passed around to different artists.
Yeah.
There is something to be said about that. Yeah. Yeah. Us comic folks love to support each other's work, but shout out to all of the comics fans who love to support their favorite artists. Actually, I want to shout out real fast. Because C stands for, actually, Sydney, the leader of C3, sent me an email because there was a backer on there recently. And it was one of my patrons, Heidi, who was like, I love Kelci stuff and I love supporting their work, and pledged.
Nice.
And I love that. I love those kinds of backers.
That is fantastic.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's funny about it is I'm pretty sure they back today. By the way, just for the record, I don't want to be creepy about it. Yeah, I don't want to seem creepy about it, but we are able to see who's backing, and it is one of those things also where every once in a while you're just looking in there and it's like, thanks, I know that person.
Yeah. Yeah, I will say Crowdfunder does give the option of because Crowdfunder does like have a feed that announces like who backed for how much. You can absolutely keep your pledge anonymous, or at least have it appear anonymous in the public feed. So there is that benefit that Crowdfunder has. Kickstarter only shows you the number of backers that you have and the amount raised that you have raised. That the information of like who exactly backed it and what their names are, that's between Kickstarter and the backer.
Like one of the things with that crowdfunder thing, like, a lot of people might want to keep it anonymous, and you can. But for someone like me who's very brand focused, because I'm also doing projects and I want to be able to reach out to other cartoonists and have them know, like, hear about me, I did back C3, or C stands for. And I said, Wright Heuman, CanonWrite Productions, because I want that name showing up as I backed this project. Like, there's actually a benefit to it in a sense.
Yeah, especially if you're running your own indie label.
Exactly.
Yes, so there is that. I was going to bring up something, and then the thought escaped me. Like a good boomerang, it'll come back to me. It had to do with Crowdfunder and the anonymity. I remember now. Part of the reason that Crowdfunder is built the way that it is, giving individual backer shout outs in a public feed, is because Crowdfunder was started by people who their first product was fundraiser. specifically for, it was kind of like a competitor to GoFundMe. So, and GoFundMe has that like publicly available feed of, you know, shouting out the different backers as the timeline goes. And more than likely a part of that is because Fundraiser and GoFundMe were started with the idea of share this link with family and friends, and then you can see the family and friends who backed your campaign.
And guilt the ones who didn't. No.
Yes. Yeah, that's probably a chunk of it. But yeah, Crowdfunder was started by folks who had done a similar-ish crowdfunding platform before. So they built their platform based on feedback from comic artists who had run on Kickstarter before, and they were like, I wish I had these things and these things and these things. And Crowdfunder was like, got you.
That honestly is the best way to describe Crowdfunder, is you can tell that it's people who knew what people didn't like about Kickstarter. There's so much like behind the scenes, like slice of life stuff that is really, really nice. And as with any good system with serious competition, Kickstarter's been improving by copying what Crowdfunder's doing. Like,
yes.
It's the thing I love about Crowdfunder and really want to see it keep getting used and keep getting supported is that it is making both platforms better because they're competing. Like they're actual competition for once.
Yeah.
It used to be just Kickstarter and everyone else is chasing them.
Yeah. Yeah. Like previously, Kickstarter, from my past experience, Kickstarter did not have referral links built into their system, but Crowdfunder did. And Crowdfunder included referral links because there was feedback from the community being like, oh man, I wish I had a referral link so that I could track where all of my pledges were coming from and which outlets are giving me the best return. And Crowdfunder was like, we got you. And then Kickstarter saw this happening and they were like, wait,
we also got you.
Oh, so I see a question in the private chat asking, whatever happened to Indiegogo?
Yeah, I was trying to remember. I knew there was another competitor at one point, and it suddenly popped in Indiegogo. But I haven't heard anything. All this kerfuffle with Kickstarter, and Indiegogo had just disappeared.
Yeah.
Does it still exist?
Indiegogo does technically still exist.
Sorry, Indiegogo.
Yeah. So I will say Indiegogo does have a feature where you can run a campaign on there and have it crowdfund for nonprofit causes, which is something you cannot do with Kickstarter. Kickstarter is very explicitly, you are running this campaign for profit.
To make a thing.
Yes, and you are not trying to like fundraise for a charity.
Right.
And Indiegogo does have that built-in thing of, oh, are you doing this as a fundraiser for a charity? Which charity are you fundraising for? Etc. Because I know for the longest time, Project for Awesome from the Vlogbrothers funded with Indiegogo, and they would run their campaign on Indiegogo. They do not do this anymore because they've gotten big enough that they've just built their own platform. Like you do.
Yeah, I mean, it eventually happens to anybody who gets just big enough. They're like, we're just going to build our own platform so we can keep all the money.
I mean, yeah.
Pretty much.
I mean, you can't blame them.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty much a pre-order system, the way that we use it.
Yeah, pretty much.
But yeah, like, what's funny with a lot of these platforms, though, is very few of them are specific necessarily to creators. Indiegogo was, but like people mention things like GoFundMe and stuff like that. That's so much more open-ended. Kickstarter was the one that was focused on projects more than anything else. And Indiegogo did some of that too, had similar discovery problems from what I understand. And I think some other issues. I actually never ran an Indiegogo, so I can't really speak to it. Crowdfunder definitely is the first one I've seen that I'm like, well, this is doing all the stuff that I wish Kickstarter did. So yeah.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to the developers who were making Crowdfunder were getting feedback specifically from comic artists and creatives who were, trying to publish books with the aid of Kickstarter. And Crowdfunder was like, well, what do you want to see more of? Like, I have not used this feature yet, but apparently Crowdfunder does allow for, we have our parent campaign, and then you can have smaller campaigns that branch off of that for individual issues. So like if you're running, I don't know, Banana Pants McGee #1. And then you're like, oh man, this campaign did really well. I need to do Banana Pants McGee #2. You can very easily like make a splinter. And the other thing too that Crowdfunder does is it allows you to clone an existing campaign, which is
so nice.
Nice. It is so nice because it's so annoying to fill in all the information brand new every time you start a Kickstarter.
Yes.
Yeah. One of the that's definitely something I'll be taking advantage of. My current plan is to use Crowdfunder for my smaller projects for a little bit and things like that. But when I did use Crowdfunder, it was for a smaller project. And one of the things that was fun is I think I asked for $500, which is on the lower side for a lot of this. And it was really funny. First off, so much easier than running a lot of Kickstarter stuff. And I also discovered things like, because I've been doing the math the way I did for Kickstarter, like once it's funded, I had more money than I thought I was going to have. And like little things like that.
Yeah.
Well, it's a pleasant surprise.
It's a great surprise. Like I got the money and I was like, wait a minute. So this total is like what I raised, and this total is how much you collected for shipping, which you didn't tell me about.
Well, you didn't tell me until much later.
Until I went digging and was like, that's separate. That's awesome. Yeah. I've made like $100 more than I thought I did.
Yeah. There is obviously a metric that as a campaign is running, Crowdfunder tells you you've actually raised this much. This much has been allocated for shipping costs, and this is how much we are saying you have raised.
So it seems to me that Kickstarter is best when you're trying to garner your audience versus like gather it together, promote it, and get a lot of that done manually versus Crowdfunder is better for just using the audience you have to its fullest potential.
That is the best way to put it, yes. Yeah, because Kickstarter does have that built-in discoverability. It is one of the best ways to build a new audience when you are first starting out.
Yeah.
Is to use Kickstarter.
We've talked earlier about the discovery. I mentioned that I thought it was better than any social media platform right now. I 100%. I want to be clear. I very much mean that. Like social media for discovery right now has been getting worse and worse. Even back when I did my first campaign in 2017, I was shocked because like I wasn't seeing that much return or anything like that from social media. I was always frustrated that like, I'm posting about the stuff on Facebook and it's not getting that much traction. And remember that was 2017, by the way. That's why it was Facebook. But or like back then I was posting to Twitter and like all these other places, and I was like, this isn't really doing much for me. And then I did that Kickstarter, and so many people found me from Kickstarter and started becoming followers on other things from Kickstarter. Like it's amazing how much it pulls people in.
Yeah. And let's say you have run a successful Kickstarter. Huzzah, yippee, round of applause for that. So how do you keep in touch with that audience as you are doing reward fulfillment and after the project has wrapped up? And this is where I really have to advocate for email newsletters. Yes. Which Columbus Cartoon Coalition does have an entire video / archived live stream all about newsletters that I've talked about. And you can check that out by checking out youtube.com / Columbus Cartoon Coalition. Correction. At Columbus Cartoon Coalition. And we'll
Yeah.
put a link up for that here on the screen in a bit. But yeah, highly recommend an email newsletter. It is one of the best ways to stay in touch with your audience after a campaign has wrapped up, and even like during the project fulfillment phase. Like, yeah, please keep posting Kickstarter updates as you are doing reward fulfillments. My recommendation is post a minimum of once per week as you are doing reward fulfillment, just to keep people in the loop about how things are developing and how it's going. Yes.
I just remember there is something about outreach and things like that I did want to ask about, because I actually don't know the answer to this, and I thought you guys might.
Okay.
So I've noticed, I don't know if this is a change or anything like that, but the majority of profiles, if I happen to look at a contributor's profile for any reason, are now marked private. And I don't know if that's a new change or something like that. Because one of the things I've discussed that I realized is one of the better ways to get the word out there is if you don't have a private profile and you have people following your profile, every time you back stuff, people get notified that you just backed this project. And that's one of the best ways to find stuff, in my opinion. Like, honestly, it's one of the things I actually realized, because Angela, sorry to out you about this, you backed this project for $1, I noticed.
Yes.
And I realized that first because my personal Kickstarter account got an email saying you'd done that.
And that's why I do it.
That's exactly why you did it, right? Yeah.
So
that is one of those things that's like, I don't know. And I started wondering, like, I see a lot of accounts now marked private. I don't know if that's a deliberate choice or if Kickstarter's now defaulting to that. But if you do a lot of backing on Kickstarter, you can help a lot of projects if you don't have your thing flagged as private. If people can follow you, because if they see you're backing a lot of projects that they like, they'll discover those projects too.
I gotta go look and see if mine's private or not. I have no idea.
I'll have to double check with mine. Obviously, if folks want to keep their accounts private, cool. We're not going to judge you for that.
Yeah,
It is, however, a handy tool to keep in mind if, for example, you are seeking to like publish your own comics at some point and you really want to build that name recognition, or you just want to give other creators a shout out, because Kickstarter does have that notification system of for the longest time, I would keep getting notifications of your friend Isaiah Broussard just backed this campaign, and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna have to check that out.
Yep, I get
that's
so
exactly what I'm talking about. Like,
emails. So and so backed this. So and so backed this.
Yeah.
All of your friends have backed this one.
Yeah.
It's remarkably effective.
Exactly. So, like, if you're someone who is comfortable with that, that is a great thing to do. Just because it'll instantly be like, oh, people will see that. I get notifications from Angela. I get a lot of notifications from Steve Bissett, because he backs a lot of projects.
But going back to Rainer's earlier point, yes, Kickstarter is a really great way to build a new audience, and Crowdfunder is a really good way to engage with your existing audience to build on your next thing, and especially if you want to build on a series of things.
Yeah, and it's always interesting, because one of the things that you're always good about, Kelci, is whenever you have a new project, you post an update in every old Kickstarter you've done to notify anyone who backed those, hey, we've got a new project.
I recommend
so there
this
really is a way to keep that.
Yes, I recommend this to anybody who, if you run a campaign, successful or not, and you want to update people on your next campaign, make an update about it on your old crowdfunding campaign to be like, I have a new one running. Here's a link to it.
And I'll give another thing with that. I haven't checked the analytics on this specific thing in a week, but I was able to see that about a week ago, a third of the people backing us had previously backed us on our last campaign, just the last one. Like, that is a lot. That's really good. Like, retention. That's really good. That really helps us.
It does.
I will, however, say to anyone listening that crowdfunding a Kickstarter or any platform from an audience of 0 is extremely difficult. I would make sure that you have some form of audience that you can get excited, as that is sort of your launching point off from there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also, just to be clear, when you're trying to find members of that audience, it's okay to be shameless. Just reach out to like friends and family, everybody. It's okay.
Yeah.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It is hard. It's very hard.
Let's actually talk a little bit about like, all right, you've done the math. You've got your campaign set up. You've decided to run it on Crowdfunder or Kickstarter. How do you get the word out that your campaign is running? Let's talk a little bit about like how to promote that kind of thing.
Partly, you never shut up.
Yeah, one, never shut up about it. Two, you can it's not like we have banners going on the bottom of the screen with links to anything or something. Like, what are you talking about? I mean, I gotta mention this because right now social media is a bit of a dumpster fire. And I've talked about the virtues of running an email newsletter, but you can absolutely do a couple of things. One, don't be afraid to make flyers. We had a little flyer campaign going for the universal flaws of robotics, and probably for C stands for as well. I'm not based in the Columbus area where a lot of the members are headquartered at, but I would not be surprised if there were flyers for C stands for at like the Billy Ireland Museum or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Would not be
surprised.
By the way,
free tip for anyone in C3 who's looking for this stuff. If you want to post something in the Billy Ireland library, go up the stairs immediately to the left, and there's a bulletin board right there, and there's a bulletin board by the bathrooms to the left. You're welcome.
Yep.
It took me a hot minute to figure that out.
Yep.
I mean,
but yeah, like
Rain, what were you going to say, Rainer?
I was just going to
go ahead, Rainer. Sorry.
You brought up earlier the possibility of email newsletters. Generally, in the modern internet, the email is, well, not a secure piece of technology, but on a technological level, but in terms of the reliability of email, it is one of the things that changes the least, that is reliable, that people will get. Mm-hmm. Email newsletter, fantastic. Direct emails to anybody you can, fantastic. Mm-hmm. And like on a solid level, I can say 12% of our funding for our current Kickstarter is from emails. I do not believe that there is currently a more reliable way to get people to understand something on the internet.
The trickiest thing with email is it doesn't help with discoverability. It's good for retaining people that have already discovered you.
Yes.
The problem is that right now social media is not great for discoverability either. The best thing I can say is two things. One, always be willing to be flexible, because honestly, we've kind of found emails are doing better than social media on this campaign. So we've been kind of swerving our plan a little bit just to focus a little bit more on emails. But we're not completely ignoring social media because we know we're going to get some from that. So diversification, honestly, is one of the best things you can do. Cast a lot of nets, because you don't know which nets are going to be helping you.
Yeah, exactly. And something that everybody here can attest to this. Something that I've been doing an awful lot of is just cold emailing people from a resource that I have of like, here's a list of podcasters that talk about comics. Here's a list of comic shops that would be willing and able to post a flyer for an indie project. Here's a list of YouTube influencers that talk about comics, and just reaching out to those people and being like, we have a new project going. Can you help us signal boost it? Yeah. I've been doing so much of that.
And I mean, one of the things we do a lot of, as example, right here, is live streaming and things like that. But even before I was doing live streaming, I was appearing on other people's live streams and doing podcasts and stuff like that when there was an anthology, or when I was doing a graphic novel or anything like that, because it was getting us out to a new audience. It really was helpful, and especially if you're comfortable having that kind of conversation and being on the internet and being a presence. It's definitely something you should give a shot.
Yes.
Even if you're not that comfortable, you should still give it a shot.
Yeah. 100%.
Yeah.
It's a little easier. My workaround around this is that I have like a little like template email that I can like customize as needed depending on who specifically I'm doing outreach to. And just kind of working off of that so that I'm not like cold typing each and every email, because oh my god, that would be tedious and that would take all day.
Well,
please don't make me do that.
You're gonna miss
I actually found that Google has it took some digging to find it, but Google has a mail merge spreadsheet through Google Sheets that you can get and use to basically you put fields inside an email in Gmail, and it'll like customize the name, email address. They were showing it for receipts and stuff like that, so you can customize what someone ordered or something like that. But I used that to bulk email a bunch of people who had previously been interested in our projects.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's how you did that.
That is how I did that. And I got confirmation that it went through to people. We got at least one person say, "Don't email me again," and that's okay. Like that happens.
Yeah. Like be prepared for rejection, but like more times than not, people will support your indie project. Yeah,
and I will also say, like, first off, this goes back to the math. Always assume the worst case scenario math. Like, we specifically were budgeting the Kickstarter. Okay, we need to sell 300 paperbacks in order to pay for all of this. And like we're assuming that math, that's going to have high expenses because we have to pay for the books to be made. We have to pay for them to be shipped. That's the worst case scenario. And we've had so many people that are just spending extra money, or like being generous and donating. I have one family member who donated $50 and said, "We just want to support you. We don't want the book." And I'm like,
"Aww, that's so nice of them."
I mean, first off, like slightly disappointing, but also money, free money. Thank you.
Right.
Hitting both ends of the spectrum there.
Right. Yeah.
Exactly.
But it's totally okay if somebody backs your project but doesn't want to request anything. There are some folks, like I'm thinking on Kickstarter specifically. There is one user that's just called the Creative Fund, and they always contribute $1.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. There's stuff like that.
Some people like that. Them and Print Ninja.
Yes. Yep. By the way, I'll tell you something very funny. When I was going through people who backed us previously, I looked at the Print Ninja one, and the name behind the person who backed it is the sales rep who's been helping us with getting this one put together. Because we're planning on printing with Print Ninja for the first time. I realized it's the same dude. This also transitions, because we talked about that kind of backing. There's one thing I do want to talk about that happens with all crowdfunding campaigns, and it's part of the darker side. And that is spam trolls in the messages. I forget this until I do a new campaign. Every single time you get so many messages that are people that are very clearly like, now the way they do it is like, "Hey, can I ask you a question about your thing?" Like that's how they tend to do it. But you get so many of them, and you look.
And I'm not running your campaign.
You've been getting it.
Yeah,
wild. Like, but there's so many of them. I'm not gonna name names in case I get sued or something. I'm gonna call out something that actually happened on this campaign that I'm not sure. I think I told Rainer. I don't know if I told anybody else.
Oh boy.
We had somebody back at our highest tier, and then message us saying, "Hey, your campaign looks good. I just backed your highest tier. Can I ask you some questions?" And I'm like, "Well, you did back. I'll ask." And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Do you have your marketing figured out for this?" I'm like, "You're a salesperson. You backed at our highest tier. What are you doing?" So I said, "Yeah, like we got a good marketing plan set up. We're good." And a week later, they waited a week and then they dropped it. So basically, this was a situation where if it weren't for the fact that we actually had a pretty good day that day and like covered it up, it would have looked like we suddenly dropped $125.
Yeah.
And that sucks. Like,
yeah.
And you just need to know that kind of thing is out there because
Mhm.
it happens. And yes,
Yeah, I
I
haven't
reported
heard
them to
that one.
Kickstarter. Yeah.
Good.
We do want to
Mhm.
clarify that, of course, that you can always cancel a pledge if your finances make it so that you cannot do
Of
it.
course.
In
Yeah.
fact,
Mhm.
if you are like, I don't know whether we're going to be able to afford this at the end of the month, I would just pledge at the beginning and then in the last week cancel if you have to. But
Mhm.
this is a specific type of scamming
Yeah.
that is different from just being able to cancel your pledge. We
Yeah.
have no resentment towards you.
Yeah, this was clearly a scam. This was not,
Yeah.
I'm no longer
That's
interested in the project I'm dropping. They did this specifically to try and force us to work
Yeah.
with them.
Yeah, which is interesting because previously I would just get cold messages through the Kickstarter system being like,
Yeah.
I saw your campaign and I really liked it. You should consider using our marketing system. And I'm just
Same
like,
with your Instagram.
no.
Yeah. Oh, we get that too.
Yeah.
Oh, another thing, because and Kickstarter has actually warned about this. This is brand new, but there are now people who are claiming in those messages and have branding that makes it look like they're with Kickstarter.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like that has become a much bigger thing,
Mhm.
and I keep reporting and blocking those. Like Kickstarter's made it very easy to report spam because I know if it's not spam, the actual Kickstarter will let me know.
Yeah. Yeah. I will say this actually dovetails into something I want to bring up about Crowdfunder. Because I've been seeing that less on Crowdfunder, but that could also be because of how Crowdfunder and Kickstarter can differentiate themselves in terms of how they fund projects. Kickstarter is all or nothing. If you do not make your goal, you do not get any of the money that was pledged towards your project. Crowdfunder can do all or nothing if you want to, but it can also do a option called keep it all, which is the payment is processed every time somebody pledges.
I do need to clarify something.
Yeah.
Kickstarter also has that option.
Oh, they
basically
do?
nobody
That's
uses
new.
it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I actually, it's possible. They've had it for a long time. They might have discontinued it because campaigns just consistently did worse if they did that. That is not the case for Crowdfunder. Crowdfunder does not do worse if you don't do all or nothing. That's the main difference. So I do recommend all or nothing for Kickstarter, but I believe it's not mandatory. There actually is a setting where you can say, I don't want it to be all or nothing. At least there used to be.
Yeah.
But yeah, they prefer all or
Kickstarter does prefer all or nothing funding.
Yeah. I suspect the main reason is you don't get the massive boost at the end of people being like, this campaign's about to not make it. Let's give them money.
There is that.
Yeah. But it's that is one of the things that you also have to explain to people because a lot of them don't understand that when they've made a pledge, they haven't given us the money yet, and they might not have to. Like I've had to. This is especially with older relatives because I'll have a lot of older relatives who end up supporting my stuff because they're cool like that. But it's one of the things I bring up. It's like, by the way, first off, you haven't actually paid for anything yet, and if I don't make the goal, you're not going to pay. They're not going to collect the money, and they're like, so what happens to the money? It's like you keep it. They don't charge you at all, and we don't get paid anything at all either. Like if we either get all of it or we get none of it.
Also, I did see in the private chat. Should we talk about the blockchain scare?
I generally wasn't sure whether we should, was why I said that.
Yeah.
I will mention it briefly because I feel like part of the reason that Crowdfunder even emerged as a competitor was because of that Kickstarter blockchain scare. Because for people who do not know, at one point Kickstarter announced that they were looking into getting blockchain onto their platform, and there was a lot of public outrage about it. And after that public outrage, they walked back on that and discontinued it. There have since been some
Which-
things that have been revealed about it, but that is for other articles to cover.
Yeah. And I will say, at the very least, credit for backtracking. So many companies don't.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
That's another thing that, like, it's another thing I know Patreon has done a couple times. Like, they'll have a major policy announcement, and then a week later, they're like, we get it. You don't like it. We're backing up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important to listen to the feedback from your users. I will say Crowdfunder is very good about listening to their user feedback. So shout out to Crowdfunder for that. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very nice. Okay, so I will ask Rainer and Angela from a backer's point of view. What do you like about Kickstarter as a backer? What do you like about Crowdfunder as a backer?
Well, Kickstarter I like because I'm used to it.
Fair.
Like, I don't even have to think. I just know how to use it now.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's legit.
And then all of the other crowdfunding sites get lumped together for me. So, because I use them all about equally, just wherever people happen to fund things.
Gotcha.
I couldn't even tell you the difference.
Mm-hmm. I think that as a backer, there's two factors that make this very interesting on my path. On one hand, there's always the scare of, is this a legitimate website? Is this something that I know? Is my credit card going to be stolen if I enter it here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Kickstarter, I've now blacked crowdfunders, and of course I'm fine with I know it's safe. However, that is one thing as a backer is like, I know what this is.
Mm-hmm.
Crowdfunder, however, Kickstarter always does feel like this is a Kickstarter. I have backed many Kickstarters. I get emails about new Kickstarters every 2 days.
Well, there have been huge projects on Kickstarter, like really well-known, massive things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Versus crowdfunder, I feel like when I've engaged in a crowdfunder campaign, it doesn't just feel like this is a Kickstarter campaign, but this is this person running it. I don't feel like I'm being talked through the corporation of Kickstarter so much. You are with Crowdfunder. Crowdfunder is a corporation and blah, blah, blah. However, I would say it does not feel that same way. It does feel a lot more like this is a creator doing this task. And that's a good feeling sometimes as a backer. Like, I'm not just like, this is another message in the Kickstarter system.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair.
I will say, that does also remind me, actually. I think of this anytime I'm running a Kickstarter. But back in the day, there was also this concern of Kickstarters being valid and like people doing scam Kickstarters, which, as far as I can tell, has drastically cut down from when the concept was originally launched. Because people have just gotten savvier about their shopping and know how this stuff happens. I just shared in our private chat what I always think of, which is a Penny Arcade comic from the time, which just shows a dude in an A-frame shirt just saying, doing a Kickstarter video. It says, "Hello, I'm John Video Games. In 1975, I invented video games." And he's like, that's his pitch for the Kickstarter, is he's claimed to be the inventor of video games.
Oh, man.
Yep.
And of course, the guy who backs is like, at the $20 level, you get a Lamborghini.
Okay, who here remembers the Kickstarter campaign for the guy wanting to crowdfund making a potato salad?
Yes. That is exactly what came to mind every time.
Yep. But the wild thing is, it was actually a dude making a video about making a potato salad. And honestly, there's a lot of incredible marketing lessons to learn from that campaign. Because it not only succeeded, it not only funded, it not only raised a whole bunch of money, but they actually followed through.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's good. That is quite a brain on that person.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. No, It really can't is I do love that happened. It is such an internet moment.
It is such an internet moment.
But yeah, like one of the things that is interesting with a lot of these, because I start like that specifically made me think for some reason of the Projects We Love thing that Kickstarter also does.
Yeah.
Which is part of their discoverability. I will say Crowdfunder has their own version. I know because I got it.
Yeah.
But basically, Projects We Love says if your Kickstarter starts performing really well, really quickly off the bat, which is why low goal is often really good, you might get flagged as a Project We Love, which gets you way more exposure and way more attention through the platform. So that's another thing to think about. If you can fund quickly, do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and Crowdfunder also has a similar feature. They will highlight on their front page, these are projects that we love, kind of using that same metric of if you pick up funding really, really fast and your metrics look really good, we'll highlight you on the page.
Yeah. Now, I'm not entirely sure what the how it exactly reads some of that, because I know Less Than Secret never got flagged for that, and it funded in 5 hours? It was crazy fast.
Something like that, yeah.
And What the Gnomes Know got funded in about 7 days and got the flag. So I don't know exactly how it works, but it is one of those situations where
I'll bet it's part
some kind of magic happens.
Yeah, part calculation and part person. Yeah. That's my guess, because I think it's at least part person.
Yeah, that might have something to do with it. I don't know. It's a Kickstarter equation, and sometimes you meet the equation. Yeah. All right. We have been going for about an hour and 16 minutes. Final thoughts, anybody?
Oh, I had a question for you guys about Kickstarter versus Crowdfunder. I know in Kickstarter, they recommend that you make a video. And I know, Ben, you and Rainer, you always do, right?
Yeah.
And can you do that on Crowdfunder? Or do they recommend that on Crowdfunder?
They do not recommend it. I did try to make a video exactly once for Crowdfunder, and for some strange reason, I could not get it to upload properly. But Crowdfunder does not require a video. They kind of encourage it, but not in the heavy way that Kickstarter does.
Yeah, so you can do your Kickstarter without it, but they're like, why would you?
Yeah.
Now,
I've always
Kelci.
I was about to say, up until really recently, I've always done a Kickstarter campaign without a video. And part of that is just my own suspicion. Because there was exactly the first ever Kickstarter campaign I ever ran had a video, and then it did not hit the goal. So, earlier when I said that I had one failed campaign, I lied. I had two. Because that very first one was a fail. Again, it was a situation where we were asking for a really high number. We were unknown names, but we were asking for a lot when we really should have just set it up as stretch goals, but we added it into the base goal. So there was that issue. Yeah. But anyway, circling back to but I stopped doing video after that campaign failed, because I was like, well, this was my first ever campaign. I did a video and it failed. So all of my future campaigns will not have videos. And then is almost like a way to confirm my suspicion. I had successful campaigns without videos.
Yeah.
So I've just started posting campaigns without videos.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah. The reason that ours always have them is twofold. One, because I'm paranoid of finding out what happens if I don't put a video in. And two, because I did a lot of film editing in college. I was basically a film major. So it's pretty easy for me to put it together. Exactly.
Okay.
I'm also used to doing voiceover. I'm used to doing a lot of this stuff. So it doesn't take a lot. Just as long as I can audio record it and have a day to sit down, I got a video.
You should have seen the version of our video that I edited for the last Kickstarter.
No, we kept your audio, and I love it. I just want to be clear.
Yeah, it was fine. The video editing was not. Thank you for fixing that.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to help with that. Like, and the thing is, I'm not doing anything crazy fancy. I don't want to scare people off from trying to do it yourself. Literally, what I do for pretty much all of it is I like have a voice recording. I'm plopping images from the comic, and then I'm making them move and shrink or grow across the screen while I'm talking. Like, it's the kind of thing that if you do just a little bit of practice, you can figure it out in even the most basic video editors.
Yeah.
But it is something I'm pretty comfortable with doing, so I just go in and pop, 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 pop.
Yeah. I have been doing a lot more YouTube stuff lately because YouTube is basically the only social media platform that I engage with currently. So I've been getting more comfortable with video editing, but there is still that like niggly like suspicion / superstition that's like, no, do not make a video. You have successful campaigns without videos.
Yeah, I keep meaning to do more videos, and I just...
If you decide to do videos and stuff like that for your campaign, one thing we'll also throw out there, because this guy needs to be heralded as a hero of the internet, Kevin MacLeod. Look up his stuff, because if you need music for your project, you can get it.
I've always read his name as Kevin MacLeod.
I've always heard it said as MacLeod, but that's because I was a Highlander fan.
Okay. But either way, you can find this guy's work at incompetech.com. All of his music is royalty free, so you can use it for videos.
Yeah.
And not worry about
you can either
getting
credit
copyright
him.
Struck.
Exactly. And his whole thing is you either credit me with, like, he's got a very specific thing you can post in, or if you want to pay a few bucks and own a perpetual license, you can do that. And this guy has done so much music. He really is a hero of the internet. Like, absolutely incredible. Like, I think there's very few people who have made so many free resources for people that are good.
If you ever watch this, thank you, Kevin.
Yes.
Thank you.
100%. Like the video for Universal Flaws of Robotics, which you should watch and then back the project, is one of his songs in the background, and he gets credited towards the end of it.
I had just switched banners. I'll go ahead and switch it back to the robot anthology. There we go. Switched it back.
It's fine. It should be in the description of the video, right?
Yeah, the links to both Universal Flaws of Robotics and C stands for from the Columbus Cartoon Coalition. The links for both campaigns are going to be in the description.
Yep.
Doing a thing on the back end here. Any other questions or final thoughts?
I'm gonna have to go back and watch my old videos and see just how bad they are. And I know there's one that starts with me like looking in the grass, and I go, and I look at the camera like, oh, hello there.
Yeah,
awful.
Yeah, no.
Something about
here's
that
the
I
thing.
find charming.
When I did, so the two Kickstarters I did before I did work with Universal Flaws of Robotics were for my mystery graphic novel series, The Letters of the Devil. And I was thinking, like, those awkward Alfred Hitchcock Presents things where, like, he doesn't seem comfortable being on the camera. I was kind of shooting for that. And like it was really great. I remember I can't remember what update there was specifically, but there was an update right around Halloween on the first one. And so there's literally, I did a video of me sitting in the dark next to a glowing lit up jack-o'-lantern with the L from Letters carved into it. Nice. Just drinking a bourbon, like, thanks guys. Just like trying to be one of those weird hosts. Like, I should dig through the internet. That stuff is like, first off, if I ever finally get that third book finished, I'm going to do the same thing. It's going to be fun.
Since we're talking about like oddball videos that we're kind of low-key embarrassed / proud of. If you find my YouTube channel, I'll go ahead and put a little banner up. YouTube.com/@Kelci D Comics. If you go there, I do have a little video for when I was running Godzilla and King Kong booty short stickers. And I did a 15-second video that is the silliest thing I've ever put to film. Check it out. It also very quickly became the video that accrued the most views. And I'm not even mad about it.
Yeah.
So good.
I love it. I love it so much. Oh, marvelous. This was a fantastic discussion. Thank you all for joining
this was fun.
me. Yes.
Thank you for hosting.
Yes, absolutely. If you would like to check all of us out on the various online homes that we have, let's go in a circle. Ben, where can people find you online?
Easiest way to find me is at bwhcomics.com. I'm also at BWH Comics on Patreon, Instagram, Twitch, and YouTube. You can also find my Weeb comic, Cospain, a Weeb comic about cosplay and convention craziness, over at cospainecomic.com.
Marvelous. Angela, where can people find you on the internets?
Same, wherever it goes. Angela B Comics, B because my last name is Boyle. And it's, AngelaBComics.com. Angela B Comics on Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and anything else that I end up picking up will be Angela B Comics.
Terrific. Rainer, where can people find you online?
Currently, the best place to find my work is at rfkannen-art.tumblr.com. However, I hope to have my website back up and running soon. And my website is rfcannon from that. Just.com.
Cool. One more time so that I can have the Tumblr link so I can make it a banner.
rfkannen-art.tumblr.com.
Marvelous. And I'll go ahead and highlight that on the screen for fairness.
I just accidentally posted it in chat instead of posting it in the private chat, but there it is.
But there we go. It's in the chat too.
Yep. And I somehow posted as CanonWrite Productions and the Columbus Cartoon Coalition and me, depending on where you are.
Yes.
Yes, I see all three.
Terrific.
Oops.
That was on purpose.
Very important.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know I just highlighted my YouTube link, but I'll go ahead and just highlight. Everybody can find me at KelciDCrawford.com. That's all my webcomics, all my YouTube videos, all my literally everything else, KelciDCrawford.com. And one final shout out for, let's begin with, C stands for the comics anthology from the Columbus Cartoon Coalition. I know that Sydney's going to ask us to do this. This is our gang sign for C3.
Yeah, I know. Take a second because the camera's inverted.
I know. And I love it. Yeah. So we're doing the gang sign. They've been doing this as a gang
sign.
Yep.
I was about to say, for CanonWrite. CanonWrite Productions.
I hadn't thought of that. C3 CanonWrite.
Woo!
That's right.
Staying alive. Staying alive.
This is remarkably trippy. To try to force your hands into a position in the first camera.
Yeah.
That cured my carpal tunnel.
All right.
It's true.
Yes. So C stands for on Crowdfunder. You can find it at crowdfunder.com/C stands for. Link in the description. And be sure to also check out the Universal Flaws of Robotics from CanonWrite Productions at tinyurl.com/UFR comic. Now, if you're looking for which one to back, I'll let you know. We're not going to pressure you in terms of the quality because both anthologies are great. I will say Universal Flaws of Robotics, barring anything magical happening, ends in a week. So that deadline is coming up sooner.
We're running out of time.
Yes. So
get it now. We have sales on stuff.
Yeah, that's tinyurl.com/UFR comic. That deadline is coming up first. Then crowdfunder.com/C stands for is on Crowdfunder until August 26th. All right. Closing statements?
Thank you for
Rock
your
on,
time.
guys, and never stop drawing.
Thank you so much for watching. You are awesome.
Bye-bye.